When Ethan Cole woke up that morning with the taste of champagne still lingering on his lips and the faint scent of jasmine perfume on his pillow, he was absolutely certain he had experienced the most vivid dream of his entire life. There was no possible way that he, a struggling single father who worked double shifts at a small accounting firm just to keep the lights on in his modest two-bedroom apartment, could have spent the previous night in the arms of one of the wealthiest women in the country. He laughed at himself as he stumbled toward the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face and staring at his reflection in the cracked mirror. But then something made him freeze completely. His lips were swollen, slightly bruised, and unmistakably marked by what could only be hours of passionate kissing. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, and when he picked it up, his heart nearly stopped beating altogether. The message read simply, "Good morning, handsome. You're probably confused. Don't be. Last night was real. Every single moment of it. I can still taste you. Victoria." And attached to that message was a photograph of him sleeping peacefully in silk sheets that definitely did not belong to his apartment, sheets that probably cost more than his entire month's salary, with the most beautiful woman he had ever seen pressing her perfect lips against his forehead while he slumbered. Ethan's hands trembled as he scrolled through his phone, desperately trying to piece together the events of the previous evening. His 6-year-old daughter, Sophie, was safely at his mother's house for the weekend, which was the only reason he had allowed himself to attend the charity gala at all. His coworker had practically dragged him there, insisting that networking was essential for his career advancement. Ethan had protested, claiming he had nothing appropriate to wear, nothing interesting to say, and absolutely no business mingling with the elite of society. But somehow, he had ended up there, nursing a glass of sparkling water in the corner of a ballroom that glittered with more diamonds than he had ever seen in his life, feeling completely and utterly out of place. That was when Victoria Ashworth had approached him. Victoria Ashworth, the sole heir to the Ashworth pharmaceutical empire, a woman whose face graced the covers of business magazines and whose net worth was measured in billions rather than dollars. She had walked directly toward him as if pulled by an invisible thread, her long silky white hair cascading down her back like a waterfall of moonlight, her perfect figure draped in an emerald gown that matched the stunning intensity of her eyes. Every man in that room had been trying to capture her attention all evening, and yet she had chosen to stand beside him, the nobody in the borrowed suit, the single father who had been counting the minutes until he could politely escape. "You look like you're plotting your escape route," she had said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement that made something flutter unexpectedly in his chest. "I've counted at least 3 viable exits, and I'm fairly certain you've identified all of them too." Ethan had nearly choked on his water. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who was doing the exact same thing," she replied, and when she smiled, it was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. "I'm Victoria. And before you say it, yes, that Victoria. The one they're all whispering about. The one they're all trying to impress. The one who would rather be literally anywhere else on the planet right now." "Ethan Cole," he managed to respond, still not entirely sure he wasn't hallucinating this entire interaction. "And I'm the one who definitely doesn't belong here and is wondering if anyone would notice if I climbed out that window behind the ice sculpture." Victoria had laughed then, a genuine sound that seemed to startle even her. "Please don't. That ice sculpture cost $40,000, and if you damage it, my grandmother will somehow find a way to blame me. She blames me for everything. Last week she blamed me for the weather." "The weather?" "Apparently my decision to wear white to her garden party offended the universe so deeply that it rained for the first time in 3 weeks." Victoria's eyes sparkled with mischief. "I'm very powerful, you see. I control atmospheric conditions with my wardrobe choices." That was the moment Ethan realized he was in serious trouble. Not because Victoria Ashworth was beautiful, though she absolutely was. Not because she was wealthy beyond imagination, though that was undeniably true. But because she was funny. Sharp. Self-deprecating in a way that seemed entirely inconsistent with everything he had assumed about someone in her position. And when she looked at him, she actually saw him. Not his cheap suit. Not his nervous demeanor. Just him. They had talked for hours that night, gradually drifting away from the main event and finding themselves on a secluded balcony overlooking the city lights. Victoria had kicked off her designer heels and sat on the cold stone railing, her feet dangling dangerously over the edge, and Ethan had found himself standing protectively close, ready to catch her if she fell. She had told him about the pressure of living up to her family name, the expectations that crushed her like a physical weight, the loneliness that came from never knowing if anyone wanted her or just wanted her money. And he had told her about Sophie, about becoming a single father at 24 when his wife decided that motherhood wasn't for her, about the terror and the joy and the overwhelming love that had completely transformed his entire existence. "She sounds incredible," Victoria had said softly, and there was something in her voice that made Ethan's heart ache. "You're lucky, you know. To have someone who loves you just because you're you. Not because of what you can give them or what you represent." "Sophie loves me despite my many, many flaws," Ethan corrected with a self-deprecating grin. "I once burned macaroni and cheese so badly that we had to evacuate the apartment. She still brings it up. She's 6, and she already has a mental list of all my failures. I believe she's preparing to write a memoir someday." "I would read that memoir," Victoria declared. "The Disaster Dad Chronicles, a story of survival and smoke alarms." "You're giving me too much credit." Sophie would title it something like, "My Father Cannot Cook, an investigation into his many crimes against food." If this story is making you smile even a little, please take just 1 second to tap that like button. It means more than you know, and it helps this story reach other people who might need it today. The memory of that conversation made Ethan smile even now, standing in his tiny bathroom with his swollen lips and his racing heart. But the evening had taken a turn that he still couldn't fully process. Victoria had received a phone call that had drained all the color from her face. Her grandmother, the formidable Eleanor Ashworth, had been hospitalized after a sudden collapse, and Victoria needed to leave immediately. But before she went, she had grabbed Ethan's hand and looked at him with an intensity that stole his breath completely. "Come with me," she had whispered. "I know it's insane. I know we just met. But I can't face this alone, and for some reason, you're the only person I want beside me right now." And Ethan, who had always played it safe, who had always made the practical decision, who had never once done anything spontaneous or reckless since becoming a father, had said yes. He had climbed into the back of her town car and held her hand as they raced through the city streets toward the private hospital where her grandmother was being treated. He had stayed by her side in the cold waiting room while doctors delivered updates and family members glared at him with suspicious, questioning eyes. He had fetched her coffee and tissues and simply been present, offering nothing but his steady, calming presence in the midst of her storm. When they finally received word that Eleanor would recover fully, Victoria had collapsed against Ethan's chest and cried with relief. And somewhere in the middle of her tears, she had lifted her face and kissed him. Not gently. Not hesitantly. But desperately, passionately, as if he were the only source of oxygen in a world that had been suffocating her for years. And Ethan had kissed her back with equal fervor, forgetting every logical reason why this was a terrible idea, forgetting the vast ocean of differences between them, forgetting everything except the feeling of her lips against his and the electricity that coursed through his veins. The rest of the night was a blur of whispered confessions and lingering touches. Victoria had brought him back to her penthouse apartment, a space so luxurious that Ethan had felt like he was walking through a dream. They had stayed up until dawn talking, kissing, laughing, and simply being together. And when exhaustion finally claimed them, they had fallen asleep tangled in each other's arms, two people who had somehow found each other across an impossible divide. Now, in the harsh light of morning, reality was crashing down on Ethan with the force of a tidal wave. He was a single father with a mountain of debt, a demanding job, and responsibilities that left no room for fairy tales. Victoria Ashworth was a billionaire whose every move was tracked by tabloids and whose family would never accept someone like him. This could never work. It was impossible. It was insane. His phone buzzed again with another message from Victoria. I know what you're thinking. I can practically hear your doubts from here. But before you convince yourself that last night was a mistake, I need you to know something. I haven't felt this alive in years. Maybe ever. Please don't run away from me, Ethan. Not yet. Before he could respond, a loud knock on his apartment door made him jump. When he opened it, he found a delivery person holding the most enormous bouquet of flowers he had ever seen, along with a small envelope addressed to him in elegant handwriting. Are you Ethan Cole? The delivery person asked, looking slightly overwhelmed by the sheer size of the arrangement. Last time I checked, Ethan replied weakly. Then these are for you. And there's a car waiting downstairs whenever you're ready. Someone named Victoria said you would know what that means. The note inside the envelope contained just a few words that made Ethan's heart simultaneously soar and sink. Breakfast? I know a place that serves pancakes almost as good as the ones you probably make for Sophie. Though I'm guessing based on the macaroni incident, your pancakes might be a crime against humanity too. Prove me wrong. V. He should say no. Every logical fiber of his being screamed that he should send the car away, block Victoria's number, and pretend that none of this had ever happened. He had Sophie to think about. He had bills to pay. He had a life that didn't include private cars and penthouse apartments and women who looked like they had stepped out of a magazine. But then he thought about the way Victoria had laughed at his terrible jokes. The way she had held his hand like he was her anchor in a storm. The way she had looked at him when she said she hadn't felt alive in years. And before he could talk himself out of it, Ethan was grabbing his jacket and heading out the door. The restaurant Victoria had chosen was small and unassuming, tucked away on a quiet street that Ethan had walked past 100 times without ever noticing. When he stepped inside, he found her sitting in a corner booth, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her long silky hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. She looked nothing like the glamorous figure from the gala. She looked real. Approachable. Beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with designer gowns or perfect makeup. You came, she said, and the relief in her voice was unmistakable. I wasn't sure you would. To be honest, I wasn't sure either, Ethan admitted, sliding into the booth across from her. I spent the entire car ride trying to convince myself this was a bad idea. And I failed miserably. Apparently my self-preservation instincts are completely broken when it comes to you. Victoria reached across the table and touched his swollen lips with gentle fingers. You're still swollen from kissing me, she murmured, her eyes soft with something that looked remarkably like tenderness. I should probably apologize for being so aggressive last night. But I'm not going to. Because I'm not sorry at all. I'm not complaining, Ethan replied, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. Though I did have to tell my bathroom mirror a very creative story about how I got this way. I'm not sure it believed me. What did you tell it? That I was attacked by a very beautiful, very aggressive bee. A billionaire bee. It was very traumatic. Victoria burst out laughing, and the sound was so pure and joyful that several other diners turned to look at them with curious smiles. A billionaire bee? That's the best you could come up with? I was working under pressure. And limited sleep. And significant emotional confusion. Ethan grinned. Give me a break. I'm usually much funnier when I'm not questioning my entire reality. They ordered pancakes and coffee and spent the next 2 hours talking about everything and nothing. Victoria told him about her dreams of using her family's wealth for philanthropic purposes, about the battle she had been fighting for years against her grandmother's more conservative vision for the company. Ethan told her about Sophie's obsession with dinosaurs, about his secret ambition to open his own accounting firm someday, about the guilt he still carried for not being able to give his daughter everything she deserved. You give her everything she needs, Victoria said firmly, her eyes fierce. Love. Stability. A father who would move mountains for her. That's worth more than any material thing in the world. Says the woman who probably has mountains custom built on request. I do not have mountains custom built. Victoria paused. I have hills, at best. Very modest hills. Barely molehills, really. Ethan laughed until his stomach hurt, and somewhere in the middle of his laughter, he realized that he was falling. Hard. Fast. Completely. For a woman who was entirely wrong for him on paper but felt absolutely right in every way that mattered. But their peaceful bubble was about to burst in spectacular fashion. As they were finishing their coffee, the restaurant door opened, and a woman who could only be described as imperiously elegant swept inside like she owned the place. She was in her 70s, impeccably dressed, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything they touched with ruthless efficiency. She spotted Victoria immediately, and her expression shifted from searching to thunderous in the span of a heartbeat. Victoria, the woman said, her voice carrying the weight of generations of authority. I suspected you would be hiding somewhere pedestrian. Though I must say, your choice of company is even more disappointing than your choice of venue. Victoria's entire demeanor changed in an instant. Her shoulders stiffened, her jaw tightened, and the warmth in her eyes frosted over into something cold and defensive. Grandmother. How wonderful to see you up and about. The doctors said you should be resting. The doctors say many things. I rarely listen to any of them. Eleanor Ashworth turned her penetrating gaze on Ethan, examining him with the sort of attention usually reserved for insects under a microscope. And who might this be? Another one of your rebellion projects? Ethan Cole, Ethan said, standing and offering his hand with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Ashworth. I'm glad to hear you're recovering well. Eleanor looked at his outstretched hand as if it might be contaminated with something unpleasant. I don't shake hands with fortune hunters, Mr. Cole. And I certainly don't appreciate strangers appearing at hospitals during family emergencies, insinuating themselves into situations where they have no business being present. Grandmother, that's enough, Victoria said sharply, rising from her seat. Ethan was there because I asked him to be there. Because he was the only person in that entire room who didn't make me feel like I was suffocating. And if you can't respect that. Respect? Eleanor's laugh was cold and humorless. You want to lecture me about respect while publicly embarrassing this family with your latest inappropriate attachment? I've worked too hard to build the Ashworth legacy to watch you destroy it for some common accountant with nice eyes and a cheap suit. If this moment is giving you chills or making your heart race, you're not alone. Drop a comment below telling me what you would do in Ethan's situation. I read every single comment, and I love hearing your thoughts. The words hit Ethan like physical blows, but before he could respond, Victoria stepped between him and her grandmother with a ferocity that surprised even her. That common accountant has more integrity and kindness in his little finger than most of the wealthy parasites you parade in front of me at your endless galas, Victoria said, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. He stayed by my side all night because he genuinely cared about whether I was okay, not because he was calculating the business advantages of being seen with me. He makes me laugh. He makes me think. He makes me feel like maybe I'm more than just a walking inheritance. Feelings, Eleanor scoffed. Feelings are luxuries for people who don't have empires to protect. You have responsibilities, Victoria. Expectations. A carefully planned future that does not include romantic dalliances with men who have nothing to offer you but emotional complications and eventual disappointment. With all due respect, Mrs. Ashworth, Ethan interjected, his voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside him, your granddaughter is one of the most remarkable people I've ever met. Not because of her money or her name, but because of her kindness, her intelligence, and her capacity to see beyond the surface of things. I'm not interested in her fortune. I'm interested in her. The real her. The one who laughs at terrible jokes and worries about disappointing people and wonders if anyone will ever love her for who she actually is. He turned to Victoria, and his heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. I can't compete with your world, Victoria. I can't offer you mansions or private jets or whatever else billionaires expect. I have a small apartment, a daughter who owns more dinosaur toys than any reasonable person should possess, and about $40 in my checking account until payday. But I can offer you honesty. Loyalty. Someone who will always tell you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it. And if that's not enough for you, I understand. But I needed you to know that what happened between us wasn't about money. It wasn't about opportunity. It was about connection. Real, genuine, terrifying connection. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Every person in the place was watching their drama unfold with rapt attention, though Ethan barely noticed. His entire focus was on Victoria, on the way her eyes had filled with tears, on the trembling of her lower lip, on the battle clearly raging behind her beautiful features. Eleanor opened her mouth to deliver what was undoubtedly another devastating dismissal, but Victoria held up her hand with an authority that silenced even the formidable matriarch. Leave, grandmother. Now. Before you say something that damages our relationship beyond repair. Victoria's voice was quiet but carried a steel that Ethan hadn't heard before. I love you. You know I do. But I will not allow you to chase away someone who matters to me. Not this time. Not again. For a long moment, the two Ashworth women faced each other in a silent battle of wills. Then Eleanor's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, some of the hardness softening into something that might have been grudging respect. You're making a mistake, Eleanor said finally. But I suppose you have earned the right to make your own mistakes by now. Just don't come crying to me when this fairy tale ends the way they always do. And with that parting shot, she turned and swept out of the restaurant with the same imperious grace with which she had entered, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. Victoria collapsed back into the booth, her whole body shaking with residual adrenaline. I've never done that before, she whispered. I've never stood up to her like that. I've never, she stopped, looking at Ethan with something approaching wonder. You stood up for me. To Eleanor Ashworth. People don't do that. People don't challenge her. They just give in because it's easier. I have a 6-year-old daughter, Ethan replied, sliding back into his seat and taking Victoria's trembling hands in his. I've faced down a child who refused to eat vegetables for an entire year. Your grandmother is terrifying, don't get me wrong. But Sophie during her anti-broccoli phase? That was true horror. Victoria laughed through her tears, a watery sound that somehow made Ethan's heart expand even further. Did you win? The broccoli war? Eventually. It took bribery, trickery, and a creative interpretation of what constitutes a dinosaur nugget. She now believes that broccoli is what made the dinosaurs strong. I'm not proud of my methods, but I got results. You're insane. Victoria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. You're absolutely, completely insane. And I think I might be falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with significance. Ethan's breath caught in his chest, and for a moment, he couldn't speak. Then he reached across the table, cupped Victoria's face in his hands, and kissed her with all the tenderness and promise he could muster. I think I might be falling in love with you too, he murmured against her lips. Which is inconvenient, terrifying, and probably the best thing that's ever happened to me. Apart from Sophie. Sophie's first. You're a close second. Maybe tied. We'll have to see how things develop. Victoria laughed again, pulling back just enough to look into his eyes. I can accept being tied with Sophie. For now. But I'm competitive, so don't expect me to stay in second place for long. The following weeks were a whirlwind of stolen moments and growing connection. Victoria inserted herself into Ethan's life with a determination that was both touching and occasionally overwhelming. She showed up at his apartment with groceries when she learned his refrigerator contained little more than leftover pizza and questionable milk. She attended Sophie's school play, sitting in the uncomfortable auditorium seats alongside the other parents and cheering with genuine enthusiasm when Sophie delivered her 3 lines as tree number 4. She navigated the complexities of introducing herself to Ethan's mother, winning over the initially suspicious woman with charm, humility, and an unexpected ability to bake excellent chocolate chip cookies. "I didn't know you could bake," Ethan had said, staring at the perfectly golden cookies with something like reverence. "I have many hidden talents," Victoria replied with exaggerated mystery. "Also, I called my family's pastry chef and made him give me a 3-hour lesson over video chat. I was not about to meet your mother without bringing homemade baked goods. That would have been a tactical error." But it was with Sophie that Victoria truly surprised him. She approached the 6-year-old with a patience and genuine interest that made Ethan's heart ache with hope and fear in equal measure. She sat through extensive explanations of dinosaur species without once looking bored. She allowed Sophie to apply glittery nail polish to her fingers with the careful concentration of a surgeon, never flinching when the polish inevitably ended up everywhere except on the actual nails. She read bedtime stories in silly voices and answered endless questions about everything from the weather to why grown-ups drink coffee that tastes yucky. "I like Victoria," Sophie announced one evening after Victoria had left. "She listens to me. And she knows what a pachycephalosaurus is without having to look it up." "That's important, Daddy." "That is important," Ethan agreed, tucking the blankets around his daughter's small form. "What else do you like about her?" Sophie considered this with the gravity that only children can bring to such matters. "She looks at you like you're special. Like you're the best thing. The way I look at my dinosaur collection. But not in a weird way. In a nice way." "Does she now?" "Yes." "And Daddy?" Sophie's voice dropped to a whisper, as if she were sharing a precious secret. "I think she makes you happy. You smile bigger when she's here. Like this." Sophie demonstrated by stretching her face into an exaggerated grin that made Ethan laugh despite himself. "You're a very observant kid, you know that?" "I know." Sophie nodded seriously. "It's because I'm smart. You tell me all the time." As Ethan closed her bedroom door, he leaned against the wall and allowed himself to feel the full weight of what was happening. He was falling in love with Victoria Ashworth. His daughter adored her. His mother had grudgingly admitted that she seemed surprisingly normal for a billionaire. Everything was moving in a direction that felt simultaneously wonderful and terrifying. But of course, because this was real life and not a fairy tale, complications were about to arise. The media had been sniffing around for weeks, apparently tipped off by someone at that initial charity gala about Victoria's mysterious companion. Photographers began appearing outside Ethan's apartment building, capturing blurry images of Victoria entering and leaving. Gossip websites ran stories with headlines like "Billionaire heiress slumming it with single dad" and "Ashworth fortune hunter or true love?" Sophie came home from school one day crying because a classmate had said mean things about her daddy being on the internet. If this story is hitting you in the feels, please share it with someone who needs to hear that love can find us in the most unexpected places. Every share helps this message reach more hearts. Ethan sat with Sophie that night, holding her small body as she sobbed against his chest, and felt something crack inside him. This was what he had been afraid of. This was why he had hesitated. His private life, his daughter's life, being dragged into the public eye for entertainment. Being mocked and analyzed and dissected by strangers who knew nothing about them. When Victoria arrived later that evening, her face pale with worry, Ethan was sitting in the dark living room, staring at nothing. She crossed to him immediately, kneeling in front of his chair and taking his hands. "Sophie's teacher called me," she said softly. "She told me what happened at school. Ethan, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. I should have been more careful. I should have." "Should have what?" Ethan's voice was hollow. "Should have not fallen for a nobody? Should have chosen someone from your own world who wouldn't bring complications?" Victoria flinched as if he had struck her. Is that what you think? That I see you as a complication? That I regret any of this? I don't know what I think anymore. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. Sophie cried for an hour tonight. An hour, Victoria. Because kids at school saw pictures of us online and decided to make fun of her. She's 6 years old. She doesn't understand why her picture is on websites or why people are saying things about her daddy. And I don't know how to explain it to her. I don't know how to protect her from this. We'll fix it, Victoria said fiercely, gripping his hands tighter. I'll hire security. I'll talk to the school. I'll get lawyers to send cease and desist letters to every website that published her photo without consent. That's not the point. Ethan pulled away, standing and pacing across the small room. You can't throw money at everything and expect it to solve the problem. This is my life, Victoria. This is my daughter's life. And it's being turned into entertainment for people who don't care about either of us. We're just content to them. Just clicks and views and gossip. And I don't know if I can handle watching Sophie be hurt over and over again because of who you are. The words hung in the air between them, and Ethan watched as Victoria's face crumpled with understanding and pain. She rose slowly from the floor, and when she spoke, her voice was thick with unshed tears. You're right, she whispered. You're absolutely right. I've been selfish. I've been so focused on how happy you make me that I didn't think enough about the consequences for Sophie. For you. She took a shaky breath. If you want me to walk away, I will. If that's what's best for your family, I'll respect that. It will break my heart, but I'll do it. Because your happiness and Sophie's well-being matter more to me than my own feelings. Ethan stopped pacing, turning to look at her. The streetlight through the window illuminated the tears tracking down her cheeks, and something in his chest twisted painfully. Victoria. I mean it, she continued, her voice stronger now despite the tears. I've never loved anyone the way I love you, Ethan. I didn't even know I was capable of feeling this much. But love means putting the other person first. Love means sacrificing your own wants for their needs. And if walking away is what you need, then that's what I'll do. That's not what I said. Ethan crossed back to her, taking her face in his hands and wiping her tears with his thumbs. I never said I wanted you to walk away. I said I was scared. I said I didn't know how to handle this. There's a difference. But Sophie. Sophie adores you. She told me tonight, right before the tears started, that she wanted to know if you could come to her birthday party next month. She's already planning what dinosaur cake she wants and what games we'll play, and your presence is apparently non-negotiable. Ethan managed a small smile. My daughter has claimed you, Victoria. And while I have many skills, fighting against Sophie's determination is not one of them. Victoria let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. But the media is a problem we'll figure out together. If you're willing. If you still want this, want us, despite the complications and the ordinary apartment and the 6-year-old who will definitely monopolize your time with dinosaur facts. I want this more than anything, Victoria said fiercely. I want you. I want Sophie. I want burnt macaroni and school plays and bedtime stories. I want real and messy and complicated. I'm so tired of perfect and polished and empty. You and Sophie are the first real things I've ever had, and I will fight anyone who tries to take that away from me. Including my grandmother. Including the media. Including you, if you try to push me away out of some misguided noble attempt to protect me from your supposedly ordinary life. Ethan kissed her then, long and deep, and when they finally broke apart, both of them were crying. The following months tested them in ways neither had anticipated. Eleanor Ashworth continued her campaign against the relationship, though her tactics shifted from direct confrontation to subtler forms of manipulation. She introduced Victoria to suitable, potential partners at every family event. She made pointed comments about legacy and responsibility and the importance of choosing a life partner who could contribute meaningfully to the family business. She conspicuously excluded Ethan from family gatherings, then expressed surprise when Victoria refused to attend without him. But through it all, Victoria and Ethan held on to each other. They established boundaries with the press, giving one carefully controlled interview that emphasized their desire for privacy, particularly regarding Sophie. They built a routine that balanced Victoria's demanding business responsibilities with Ethan's work schedule and Sophie's school activities. They had fights about stupid things and important things, learned each other's triggers and comfort zones, and slowly, carefully, wove their lives together into something stronger than either could have built alone. On the night of Sophie's 7th birthday party, Ethan watched from across his small living room as Victoria helped his daughter unwrap presents while wearing a sparkly party hat that probably cost nothing but was priceless in its absurdity. Sophie was explaining, in great detail, the differences between the various dinosaur figurines she had received, and Victoria was listening with the same focused attention she probably gave to multi-million-dollar business negotiations. "She's going to be a paleontologist," Ethan's mother said, appearing beside him with a knowing smile. "That child has been planning her dinosaur career since she was 4. I believe she currently wants to be a paleontologist princess astronaut," Ethan corrected. "She's keeping her options open." "Smart girl." His mother was quiet for a moment, watching Victoria tickle Sophie into giggling fits. "I was wrong about her, you know. I thought she was just playing at ordinary life. Slumming it for entertainment before going back to her real world. And now? Now I think she found something in you and Sophie that she didn't know she was missing. Something all her money couldn't buy." His mother patted his arm gently. "Don't mess this up, Ethan. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Mom. I'm serious. That woman loves you. Really loves you. That's rare, especially for someone in her position. Don't let fear or insecurity or stubborn pride convince you to throw it away." Before Ethan could respond, Victoria was approaching them, Sophie clinging to her like a koala bear. "Someone," Victoria said, her eyes sparkling with amusement, "has requested that I read her new dinosaur book at bedtime. Apparently I have been specifically chosen for this honor because I do, and I quote, the best T-Rex voice." "It's true," Sophie confirmed solemnly. "Victoria makes the T-Rex sound very scary but also nice. Like a scary dinosaur who would still share her toys." "The highest compliment a dinosaur could receive," Ethan agreed gravely. "Go ahead. I'll clean up out here." As Victoria carried Sophie toward the bedroom, pausing to grab the new book from the pile of presents, Ethan felt his mother's hand on his arm again. "Go with them," she said quietly. "I can handle cleanup. Go be with your family." "Your family." The words hit Ethan with unexpected force. Because somehow, without him fully realizing it, that's what they had become. A family. Improbable and unconventional and absolutely perfect. He found Victoria and Sophie already snuggled in Sophie's small bed, the new book open between them. Victoria was reading in an animated voice, making Sophie giggle with her dramatic interpretations of various prehistoric creatures. When she spotted Ethan in the doorway, she smiled and shifted over, making room for him on the other side of Sophie. For the next 20 minutes, they were a tangle of limbs and laughter and dinosaur sounds. Sophie eventually fell asleep between them, her small hands clutching both of theirs, her face peaceful with the contentment of a child who feels completely safe and loved. "I want to adopt her," Victoria whispered suddenly, her eyes fixed on Sophie's sleeping face. "Not replace her mother. Not take anything away from you. But I want to be her parent too. Legally. Officially. I want her to know that she's mine just as much as she's yours." Ethan's heart stopped for a full second before resuming at twice its normal speed. "Victoria. I've been thinking about it for months. I've talked to lawyers. I've researched the process. I know it's a huge decision and we should discuss it properly, Anne." Ethan kissed her, cutting off her nervous rambling. When they broke apart, he was smiling so wide it almost hurt. "Ask me again tomorrow," he said. "When Sophie's awake. Ask both of us. Because this should be her decision too. And if she says no? She won't. She's been asking me for weeks when you're going to become her official other parent. I've been deflecting because I didn't want to pressure you." Victoria laughed softly, tears glinting in her eyes. "We're both idiots." "Complete idiots," Ethan agreed. "Perfect for each other, really." They lay there in the quiet darkness, their sleeping daughter between them, and Ethan reflected on the impossible journey that had brought them to this moment. A single father in a borrowed suit. A lonely billionaire looking for connection. A charity gala that neither of them had wanted to attend. A kiss that had changed everything. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn day, Victoria and Ethan stood before a judge while Sophie bounced excitedly beside them. The adoption was finalized with the stroke of a pen, and Sophie immediately demanded that they go celebrate at the Dinosaur Museum because that was obviously the only appropriate venue for such an occasion. Eleanor Ashworth had not attended the hearing, but she had sent flowers and a card that read simply, "Welcome to the family, Sophie. May you be as stubborn and determined as your new grandmother. We're going to need it." It wasn't an apology for months of resistance, but it was an acknowledgement. A beginning. And for Victoria, who had spent years fighting for her grandmother's approval, it meant more than any grand gesture could have. "She's coming around," Victoria said to Ethan that night, the museum trip completed and Sophie thoroughly exhausted. In her own impossible, stubborn, Ashworth way, she's coming around. She'd be foolish not to. Ethan pulled Victoria close, breathing in the jasmine perfume that would forever remind him of their first meeting. "You're pretty amazing, in case no one's told you that today. You've told me approximately 17 times. Not that I'm counting. 18, now. Keep up." Victoria laughed, tilting her face up for a kiss. "What would I do without you? Probably something boring and sensible. Make responsible business decisions. Date people your grandmother approves of. Never experience the joy of stepping on a dinosaur toy in the middle of the night." Sounds terrible. "The worst," Ethan agreed. "Lucky I saved you from that fate." They had been together for 2 years when Ethan woke up one morning with the familiar taste of champagne on his lips, the faint scent of jasmine on his pillow, and Victoria sleeping peacefully beside him. They were in her penthouse now, though they split their time between both apartments so Sophie wouldn't have to change schools. Victoria's silk sheets surrounded them, and for a moment, Ethan flashed back to that first morning when he had been so certain it was all a dream. "You're staring," Victoria murmured without opening her eyes. "It's creepy." "I'm admiring," Ethan corrected. "There's a difference." "There really isn't." She opened one eye, smiling softly at him. "What are you thinking about?" "That morning after the gala. When I woke up convinced I had hallucinated the entire night. When I looked in the mirror and saw that my lips were swollen and I couldn't understand how any of it could be real." Victoria reached up, tracing his lips with gentle fingers. "And now? Now I wake up every morning knowing exactly how real it is. And I still can't quite believe my luck. Luck had nothing to do with it." Victoria pulled him down for a kiss that was soft and sweet and filled with promise. "We chose each other, Ethan. Every day. Through every complication and every challenge and every disapproving grandmother. We keep choosing each other. That's not luck. That's love." And she was right, Ethan realized. The fairy tale ending wasn't handed to them on a silver platter. It was built, day by day, choice by choice, through persistence and patience and an absolute refusal to give up on what they had found in each other. They were proof that love didn't care about social status or bank accounts or anyone else's expectations. Love only cared about connection. About two people seeing each other, truly seeing each other, and deciding that nothing was more important than holding on to what they had discovered. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe even a little bit more in the power of unexpected love, I would be so grateful if you would take a moment to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story like this one. Every subscriber makes it possible for me to keep creating content that I hope brings joy and inspiration to your life. And now, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from today? Drop your country in the comments below and let me know where in the world this story reached you. I'm always amazed by how many different places these stories travel to, and it would mean so much to know that we're connected across all those distances. Remember this: love doesn't follow rules. It doesn't check your credentials or your net worth or whether you fit into someone else's plan. Love finds you in unexpected moments, in borrowed suits and ballroom corners, in shared laughter and shared tears. And when it finds you, when that connection sparks to life against all odds, the only thing you have to do is be brave enough to hold on to it. Your fairy tale might not look like anyone else's. It might be messy and complicated and full of obstacles you never anticipated. But if it's real, if it's true, if it makes you feel alive in a way you never knew was possible, then it's worth fighting for. It's worth every challenge, every doubt, every moment of fear. Because in the end, we're all just people looking for connection. Looking for someone who sees us for who we really are and loves us anyway. And that kind of love, the real kind, the kind that transforms and heals and inspires, that kind of love is worth more than any fortune in the world. Ethan Cole woke up one morning thinking it was all a dream. He discovered it was real when a billionaire touched his swollen lips and told him the truth. And in the years that followed, he built a life more beautiful than any dream could have imagined, not because of money or status or luck, but because two people chose to believe in each other when everyone said it was impossible. May you find the same courage. May you take the same leap. And may you discover, as they did, that the greatest adventures begin when we open our hearts to the unexpected. Thank you for watching, thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next story.